Hello and welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we'll talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our national landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, Senate approves electronic transmission of results and direct primaries for political parties. Also ahead of Anambra governorship election, police to deploy 34,587 personnel. And later on the show, Army confirms ISWAP leader Al-Barnawi dead. At the course of the program, we'll take your questions. First, subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your questions in the comment section. I've joined me, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju. Thank you so much for joining us, BKO. Let's get down to brass tacks. Finally, the Senate has amended the Constitution to accommodate two important factors in our electoral process. These are electronic transmission of results and direct primaries for political parties. It's been a long time coming. Is that to say the power has gone back to the people, BKO?
Well, I would say that there was a bit of misunderstanding between the lawmakers. It wasn't as if the lawmakers didn't want electronic transmission of results from the beginning. What happened was that on the day the House of Reps Committee mandated to look at the Electoral Act and come up with amendments to the Electoral Act, there was an argument over whether or not electronic transmission of results can take place across the country. There was a lawmaker who got up and asked for an amendment to what was proposed by the committee, or the House of Reps Committee, that was given the task of amending the Electoral Act. So the argument was then that, look, let us not take electronic transmission of results. The network is bad and all that. So they had that argument. And the PDP caucus of the House of Reps left in anger. They walked out in anger because they felt there was a desire on the part of their colleagues from the APC to expunge the portion talking about electronic transmission of results from the Electoral Act before it is eventually passed by the House of Reps. But after they walked out, the good news was that the House of the bill by the Press Committee. So it is that version of the bill as presented to the Committee of the Whole that the House eventually passed after the work. The House of Reps, its own version of the bill, and then to achieve concurrence, the Senate decided to then also the House of Reps version, and then the electronic transmission of results sailed in. I think this was also made a lot easier because of the long break. That long break by the so we now have a situation in which lawmakers from both sides of the divide elected to talk to one another, and then we have the electronic transmission of results. The little bits that they eventually added was the matter of direct primaries. And the reason is not far-fetched. A lot of these lawmakers went home to take part in the APC World Congresses, and they were disenfranchised because the governors of their states effectively took complete control of affairs and ensured that many of the federal lawmakers could not even get involved in the electoral process. Some of their members, some of their supporters could not vote. So in anger, it was easier for them to come together and say, look, let us have direct primaries instead of indirect primaries, or what is called consensus, which at the end of the day does not allow every card-carrying member of a political party in building the structures of their party. So it's the combination of anger on the part of federal lawmakers, especially those of them from the APC, that led to the adoption of the direct primaries. The direct primaries is very participatory. It guarantees everyone a vote as long as you're a card-carrying member of a political party. But you cannot say the same of the indirect primaries, because the indirect primaries is only the delegates that get to vote. And if you control affairs at the level of the World Congresses, it is the people, it is your supporters who manage to win by your own design that also get to take part in the, you get to vote in as delegates in subsequent elections. So effectively, the federal lawmakers have expanded the scope of primary elections by coming up with this bill that makes every card-carrying member eligible to participate in choosing their leaders.
All right, that makes sense. Because we want to be prudent with the amount of time that we have, and because you are so concerned about us taking questions from our audience, let me quickly switch tack now by talking about the Anambra election. We'll come back to our first topic. Following security threat analysis conducted by the Force Intelligence, Nigeria Police say it is going to deploy more than 34,000 men, 3 helicopters for Anambra governorship election. How imperative is this for you?
No, it's extremely important to have as many security operatives as possible to protect voters during the Anambra election. If you've been following the run-up to the November 6th election, you'll see that there has been so much violence in Anambra State. A lot of it is tied to the activities of separatist groups in the southeast. The view of the separatist groups is that there should not be an election in any part of the southeast. They are calling for a referendum, that there has to be a referendum before an election can take place. If you recall, this happened 4 years ago too. but we managed to conduct an election and the governor was re-elected. So the point that I'm making is the whole area some time. In fact, I can tell you that only the candidates of the ABGA, Professor Chasoludo, has been able to campaign, move around, campaign, in that state. The candidates of APC, the candidates of PDP are not going around to campaign. In fact, some of them are holding rallies in Harvard. Some of them are holding meetings. So, for fear of being attacked, they are not holding rallies in Anambra State. And even the candidate of ABGA, Professor Charles Masoludo, has also come under attack. He almost got killed. Security agents was killed. And during this week, in Hihiala, gunmen stormed the campaign grounds of Professor Soludo and killed some people. Luckily, the governor of the state, Obaino, and Professor Soludo had not arrived at the campaign venue at the time the killings took place. So given the orgy of violence, that we have been seeing in the last few weeks, it makes sense to provide enough security. Otherwise, the election will be largely boycotted by eligible voters or registered voters, because people will place greater accent on their lives than exercising their franchise. So I believe that it makes sense to have that number of policemen in Anambra State, and it makes sense for the soldiers to also come in full force, and for the civil defense to also get involved in securing the Anambra territory during the election. Everybody needs to jump in. All the security agencies that we have as a country need to jump in, play their part in protecting lives and property, and ensuring that we are able to conduct elections in a peaceful atmosphere. I am impressed with the determination of INEC. INEC says it's determined to go ahead with the elections because it's a lot difficult for INEC to remobilize after demobilizing. To mobilize after demobilizing. So they don't want anything to disrupt this election, to force it, postponement of this election.
Well, I believe it's in tandem with your aspiration.
The flag rally of the APC had to be postponed for security reasons. So if people can't campaign freely, remember the candidate of YPP had to come and campaign in Lagos for an election holding in Anambra. So it is that bad. We've got to protect our people and ensure that on election day, they will feel free to go and cast their ballots. And the way to do that is to keep the streets safe, keep the precincts of polling stations safe, and give our people the assurance that they can go out and cast their ballots, they can go out and exercise their franchise, and nothing will happen to them.
But BKO, are you not worried about, militarization of our election process? We talk about people settling electoral issues, in court almost all the time. This time round, it looks like we are militarizing it. We are making too much of, security personnel on the field. Isn't that a cause for concern?
Yes, this militarization is inevitable. Would you rather have the streets unmanned by policemen and soldiers,
Right.
in the face of rampant killings by unidentified gunmen. I mean, there is a gradual slide to anarchy in Anambra State, and the only way to address that is to put enough security operatives in that state to do this job of protecting our people. We've seen elections held in our country with sufficient security men deployed, and people were able to cast their ballots peacefully. My hope is that this is what will happen in Anambra State. As long as the policemen and soldiers do not attempt to rig the election, do not support any party, do not get too close to the polling centers, because the electoral law or the electoral act does not permit security men to get too close to the polling centers. As long as they maintain that sufficient distance to the polling centers, to the polling stations, I'm sure that we'll be fine. But we still need to keep those streets safe, and so that our people will have the confidence to move around on election day, right, and cast their ballots.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move to our last topic, because we're already having lots and lots of questions for you, BKO, on our YouTube channel. Just keep sending your questions. We'll do as much as we can to take them. Let's talk about the Nigerian army, confirming the death of Al-Barnawi, who is the son of the founder of the Boko Haram militant group, Muhammad Yusuf. Does this call for jubilation, BKO?
No, there is no. When a member of a terrorist group dies, it doesn't always signal the death of that terrorist group, because they have structures. Don't forget that for a long time, Al-Barnawi was hidden by some of his own loyalists. He was not very much involved in ISWAP activities. ISWAP had some leaders in the last couple of years, apart from Abu Musab Al-Barnawi. But some people loyal to him got him out of detention. So his own loyalists took control, got him out of detention, and he seized power. And after he seized power, the ISIS, which is the parent body of Boko Haram now, named him as Amir al-Momini of the ISWAP, making him effectively the leader of the group. And one of the first things he did was to launch an attack on Shekau's camp. He got his own loyalists. They launched an attack on Shekau's camp, and with them closing in, and Shekau fearing that he could be arrested, put on trial, decided to kill himself with a suicide vest. He did not want anybody to kill him. Shekau killed himself. Now, after Shekau killed himself, Al-Barnawi's group, the ISWAP, moved in a convoy of 30 gun trucks deep into Sambisa with the intention of arresting Shekau's commanders and forcing them to pledge allegiance to ISWAP leadership led by Abu Musab Al-Barnawi. The goal was to unify the two groups. But what we have seen is that among some die-hard Shekau supporters, Shekau fighters, there was anger about the way the Abu Musab Al-Barnawi launched an attack which led to the death of their leader, Shekau. So one of those leaders who fled to Cameroon launched a fight back. He launched a fight back, and then Al-Barnawi's camp was stormed, and in the process he was injured. Once he was injured, it looked certain that he could die, so he handed over power to a certain Malam Bako. Malam Bako is the new leader of ISWAP, and Abu Musab Al-Barnawi succumbed to his injuries. He was not killed by the army. He died from injuries he sustained when the Shekau faction launched an attack at his base. Don't forget, the two groups had been attacking one another in the last couple of weeks, leading to heavy casualties on both sides. So this particular attack may not even be the last between the two groups as they seek to assert supremacy over one another. ISIS, or the Islamic State, is bent on having just one group instead of a situation in which we have the Shekau faction as well as the other faction loyal to the late Abu Musab Al-Barnawi, who was first appointed as ISWAP leader in August 2016. So,
okay,
it's Al-Barnawi is gone, but
right,
the group remains.
Okay, so BK, let's start taking questions from our.
A couple of days back.
Yeah. Let's sorry about that. Let's start taking questions from our online those who are engaging us online. We've got Olushola Julius, Fabian Akaize, and Richard Ijadunola. So three of them are saying something close to whether it is not possible for the election process to be manipulated, both electoral transmission, transmission of election results and the what's it called, the direct primaries.
Of course, the risk of manipulation is always there. Whether you use electronic transmission of results or you fail to use it, there are many ways by which you can manipulate the electoral process. Sometimes you even suppress votes. The military, the armed forces can be used to suppress votes from an area where a particular party is deemed to be strong. You know, and once you do that, you ensure that that party is unable to return the quantum of votes that it usually returns from a stronghold, which normally should help it to win. So we've seen that happen in our country. Suppression of votes is popular, even if you give the election a semblance of fidelity. So there is no system in place that cannot be abused. Whether it is direct primaries or electronic transmission of results, the process can still be manipulated. But the advantage of the electronic transmission of results is that everyone gets to monitor the results from polling station to polling station, right up to ward level and then the state level. The paper trail enables thugs and other good local government.
Right, BKO? BKO, are you there? If you can hear me, let's go to, let's take the next question. I guess you've done justice to that. Fabian Akaize is saying, deploying police officers in the 10,000s or in their thousands who are deprived of basic welfare to secure the Anambra elections spells trouble and sale of security protection to the highest bidder. I don't know whether you can read his mind.
I think it's not convinced that in spite of heavy deployment of the police, that the election will still not be manipulated. It's difficult at this stage to say that. I think we should wait for INEC to conduct this election. INEC are in recent years, and those elections were free and fair. The ruling party didn't get a chance to win, you know. So we had an election in 2018. It was free and fair. We also had an election, I think in 2016, or 2016 or 2014. It was free and fair from that same Anambra state, you know. So, and the ruling party didn't find a way to win. ABDA has always dominated elections in Anambra state, except the federal legislature, elections into the federal legislature. But the House of Assembly, the governorship elections, ABDA has always won. So I want to believe that we will see a free and fair election in a free and fair governorship election in Anambra state, as we've seen in the last 12 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Let me take the question that appears to be the last here, which might be the last on the show today. He's saying, BKO, don't you think that the fight between Al-Barnawi and Shekau group is a plus to the fight to insurgency, or fight against insurgency?
A plus to what?
He said, don't you see that it's a plus to the army? Yes, it's a plus to the fight against the insurgents, to the army, to Nigeria.
Yeah, I guess the army should be excited about the fact that these guys, they are unable to come together, killing one another. For every terrorist killed, there will be jubilation within the ranks of the Nigerian army, because that's one terrorist less. So they would be happy about that, and they will be hoping that this infighting continues until they completely decimate one another. But as I've said earlier, in spite of the death of Al-Barnawi, in spite of the attacks being conducted against one another by the two groups, ISWAP has been launching attacks on the Nigerian army. In the last 2 weeks, they've killed soldiers. The other day, they ambushed Nigerian troops, and that's even after Al-Barnawi's death. So the terrorist groups are usually well structured, well organized, and when you take out an individual, it doesn't completely destroy the group. It certainly can weaken the group when you take out a very effective, a very useful member of the group. But it will not sound the death knell for the group, because they are propelled by ideology and they are extremely well motivated. Motivation is not simply about money. The ideology propels them, the ideology motivates them, and as you can see, they are even still launching attacks on army bases. So the group still constitutes a big threat. So the army should just carry on with its own work and not be bothered about what's going on between the two groups. It should just carry on with their own military campaign and not be bothered about the infighting between those two groups. It's like when you go to South Africa and you are on safari, you are inside your car, you are watching the lion try to take down a gazelle. You cannot show sympathy to the gazelle at that point because it is nature. If the lion does not kill, it cannot survive. So you just watch from a distance as the lion takes down the buffalo and kills the buffalo.
Right. Mikhail, yeah, so on a final note, let me quickly try to ship this in. Governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, suggested that those who are serving in Ekiti or, in Nigeria, the core members, they should be deployed to fight insecurity in the land. I don't know whether you saw the story and how did that come to you?
No, I do not oppose the idea of giving the EU core members military training. That is done in some countries of the world. At a point in your life as a young man, you go to serve your country and they give you military training. It's done in most of the Eastern Europe, in Israel as well. And when war comes, you are then deployed as a reservist. The reserve, the fighters that many of those countries have in reserve are more than their regular forces. Algeria, Egypt, they have plenty of people in reserve. People who, as young people, they were given some form of military training. So when war comes, they can then get some of those reservists to join the regular army, to beef up the number of the regular army, to fight for their country. So it's not something that's entirely new. It's an idea. It's an idea that I am not completely against. Those who want to be given military training, they can be given military training.
Okay.
They can be given military amongst the EU core members. And I know there are a good number of them who will be proud to serve their country, will be proud to get military training to serve their country when the time comes. But it's not everyone who is a youth corps member that can actually
and I think one of our contributors online to Nigeria is also saying that he's also agreeing with you, saying Israel, Russia, Algeria, etc. Many countries have military service. Well, that's it. That's our show for today's edition of Issues with Jide. Special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, for those insightful analyses as always. And thank you too.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, my party.
Thank you so much, sir. I remain your student every day and time.
We'll keep getting better.
Absolutely.
Thank you for a flawless program today.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you to our audience for joining us on every edition. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, TVC News. Click on the subscription button, as always, and do all of those things to get the latest information. I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition. Bye for now.